Blood of My Blood Episode 9 just flipped everything upside down. Episode 9 gave us exactly what we've been waiting for. And at the same time, it made us question if our favorite characters are even ready for what's next. From the very beginning, the energy was tense, almost suffocating. Like everyone in the room knew a storm was about to hit. And honestly, that's exactly what happened. The hunting gathering at Brar Castle, which sounded like just another political event, turned into the stage for betrayal, rebellion, and heartbreak. The moment the Earl of Mar stood up and made that proclamation, you could just feel the air shift. Suddenly, this wasn't about families and marriages anymore. It wasn't about secret love stories or hidden alliances. It became about survival, power, and who was going to walk away alive. The Jacobite Rising is no longer whispers in the background. It's here, and it's forcing every single character to choose a side whether they're ready or not. And that choice is going to break relationships, destroy trust, and maybe even cost lives. But let's back up a little, because before the chaos fully broke out, we saw Ellen being threatened once again. Malcolm Grant's uncle standing right in front of her, practically warning her that if she even thought about breaking Malcolm's heart, she'd regret it. And this is where things get scary. Ellen isn't just up against her own family anymore. She's got the weight of the Grants pressing down on her too. She's trapped in a web where every move she makes is being watched. And it feels like even breathing wrong could cost her everything. The look on her face, this mix of fear and fire, showed that she knows the walls are closing in. At the same time, Brian is nearby, desperate, waiting, searching for any chance to get her out. You can see how torn he is. On one hand, he's ready to risk everything for Ellen. On the other, he's cautious. Maybe too cautious. Because he knows one wrong move and it won't just be his life on the line, it'll be Ellen's, too. And this is where the frustration creeps in. Some people are going to look at Brian and think, why doesn't he just grab her and run? But the truth is, Brian isn't Jaime and this isn't Claire. This is a different time, a different risk. And Brian is playing the long game, even if it breaks his own heart. Meanwhile, Julia is there, dressed beautifully, standing with William. But her mind is somewhere else entirely. The way Henry spots her, it's like the whole world stops for him. That 1 second where his eyes lock on her. You can feel everything he's been carrying this whole season. The pain, the longing, the frustration of not being able to hold her, it all comes crashing down. And yet, as much as he wants to just run to her, Archibald's shadow is right there, reminding us of the danger. One wrong step, one wrong move, and Henry could end up with a bullet in his back. That's the kind of cruel tension this episode thrives on, characters being so close, yet so far away, with danger lurking at every turn. Then there's Malcolm Grant, who is suddenly pushing for marriage immediately. No more waiting, no more delays. He wants Ellen as his wife, right after the hunting event. And that changes everything. It's no longer a slow ticking clock, it's a bomb counting down. And Brian and Ellen have seconds left to make their move. If Ellen doesn't warn Brian, if Brian doesn't act fast, the door is going to slam shut. And they'll lose their chance forever. The urgency in this part of the episode makes your chest tight. You can feel the panic building, the dread settling in. And the worst part? You just know the Grants won't let Ellen go without a fight. But that's not even the full weight of what episode 9 brings. Because in the background, you've got Colum and Duel circling each other like predators. Colum asking, "What are you hiding from me?" And Duel clearly keeping secrets tied to the rebellion. This isn't just a family drama anymore, it's a political powder keg. With the Earl of Mar lighting the fuse, every single alliance is about to be tested. And once sides are chosen, there's no going back, and just when you think maybe, just maybe, there's hope for love to win out, Mrs. Fitz's words echo like a death sentence. One of you will be dead. She doesn't say it to be cruel. She says it because she knows. Because she sees where this path is headed. And the moment she says it, you can see Ellen's resolve start to crack. You can see the fear settle in her bones. The fear that maybe love isn't enough to survive in a world built on duty, honor, and betrayal. The episode closes with Ellen in tears. And it leaves us wondering, are those tears because her wedding to Malcolm is closing in? Or are they because Brian, carrying that piece of cloth from their hand fasting, is about to make the most painful choice of his life? To walk away, to let her go, not because he doesn't love her, but because he does. That's the kind of heartbreak that cuts deep. And episode 9 doesn't just play with it, it forces us to sit in it. What makes episode 9 so brutal isn't just the politics or the proclamations, it's the way every character is being pulled in different directions at the same time. Nobody is safe, nobody can just breathe and make a choice without risking everything. And the way the writers layered these storylines together made this episode feel like it was constantly tightening around the characters' throats. Every time you thought one of them might catch a break, something else snapped into place, trapping them even deeper. Take Ellen, for example. Her world is shrinking fast. She's already under pressure from Malcolm's uncle, already being forced into this marriage she doesn't want. And now she has the shadow of Mrs. Fitz's warning haunting her. That line, "one of you will be dead," it's not just a passing comment. It's a curse, a prophecy, a reminder that nothing good ever lasts in this world. And Ellen knows it. That's why her tears at the end of the episode feel so heavy. They're not just tears of heartbreak, they're tears of someone realizing that, no matter how much she fights, she might never get the ending she wants. And then there's Brian. His struggle is one of the hardest to watch because you can see how badly he wants to take action. But every move is a gamble that could end in blood. He's caught between passion and reason, and honestly, I don't know which one is going to win. The way he clutches that cloth from their hand fasting, it's symbolic. It's like he's holding onto the idea of Ellen, the memory of what they promised each other, while at the same time convincing himself that maybe letting her go is the only way to keep her safe. It's heartbreaking because you know he's not wrong. In this world, love doesn't just get tested, it gets punished. Meanwhile, Julia and Henry's situation continues to twist like a knife. Their reunion at the end of episode 8 gave us a taste of hope, but episode 9 reminded us just how fragile that hope really is. Henry spotting Julia in the crowd should have been a beautiful moment, but instead it was laced with danger. Archibald is still hovering like a vulture, waiting for any excuse to strike. And Julia is bound by her marriage to Simon Fraser. She's living in a cage, dressed up to look like freedom, but it's still a cage. And Henry knows it. That's why his desperation cuts so deep. He doesn't just want Julia back, he needs her. She's his reason to keep fighting, but every time he reaches for her, the world yanks her further away. And let's not ignore Simon Fraser in all of this. Episode 9 made it painfully clear that he's starting to realize his son is serious about Ellen. And that realization is dangerous. When powerful men sense weakness, they don't ignore it, they crush it. If Simon truly believes Ellen could be the wedge driving his son off course, then she's in more danger than she even realizes. Because Simon isn't just a father, he's a strategist. He won't let something as simple as love jeopardize his family's standing. And if that means getting rid of Ellen or forcing her hand, I have no doubt he'll do it. That's the level of ruthless energy this episode hinted at. And it makes Ellen's future feel even more uncertain. But the real shift in this episode came from the political stage. The Earl of Mar's proclamation wasn't just words, it was the opening shot of a rebellion. And once that standard was raised, everything changed. Suddenly, alliances mattered more than promises, and loyalty became a weapon. Characters like Duel, who've been lurking in the shadows, are now stepping into the light. And Colum calling him out, "What are you hiding from me?" was the moment the personal and the political collided. Because if Duel is truly throwing his support behind the Jacobite cause, then Colum's entire position is threatened, and with it, every character connected to him. That's the beauty and the cruelty of episode 9. It doesn't give anyone a way out. Ellen can't run without bringing the wrath of two families down on her. Brian can't act without risking Ellen's life. Julia can't move without Simon noticing. And Henry can't protect her without painting a target on his own back. And in the middle of all this chaos, the Jacobite Rising is pulling everyone into a war they didn't ask for but can't avoid. It's like the writers are saying, "You thought this was about love? You thought this was about family? No, this is about survival. And survival doesn't care about your feelings." And yet, as dark as this episode was, there were still flickers of humanity. Davina Porter, for example, continues to surprise me. Early in the season, I found her motives confusing, even annoying. But now she's proving herself to be one of the few people willing to see past appearances. She recognizes Julia's bravery, she sees William's innocence, and she's willing to put herself on the line to protect them. In a world where everyone is calculating, scheming, and threatening, Davina feels like the rare voice of compassion. And maybe that's why she matters. Because in times of rebellion and betrayal, characters like her remind us that there's still room for kindness even if it's fragile. The tension, though, is unbearable. You've got Ellen trying to hold on to hope while drowning in fear. Brian pacing the edge of a decision that could destroy them both. Julia standing in plain sight but completely unreachable. Henry clenching his fists knowing he's powerless. And the political landscape erupting beneath their feet. Episode 9 didn't just move the story forward, it shoved it off a cliff. And now, we're all just waiting to see where it lands. One of the things that really stood out in episode 9 is how much the show leans into the idea of timing, how a single delay, a single hesitation can change everything. That's why this episode felt so heavy. It wasn't just about what the characters did, it was about what they couldn't do, or what they were forced to hold back on. And the frustration of that is exactly what keeps us glued to the screen. Yelling at these people as if they can hear us, let's talk about Brian and Ellen again. Because their story is reaching a point where it feels like something has to snap. When Malcolm suddenly pushes for marriage immediately, the pressure goes through the roof. Ellen is cornered in a way that feels suffocating, and you can tell she's caught between her heart and her reality. On one side, she has Brian, the man she actually loves, the man who makes her feel alive. On the other, she has Malcolm, who, let's be real, hasn't been the worst. He's not cruel like his father, he genuinely cares for her. But that doesn't change the fact that Ellen doesn't want him. What makes it even harder to watch is that Malcolm's niceness makes it more difficult for Ellen to just reject him outright. Because when someone isn't an obvious villain, the guilt of breaking their heart feels heavier. And Ellen is carrying all of that weight alone, and Brian, poor Brian, is practically tearing himself apart. You can see it in every decision he makes. His love for Ellen is battling against his fear of what will happen if he takes her away. That cloth from their handfasting, the one Mrs. Fitz gave him, isn't just a piece of fabric anymore. It's a symbol of the impossible choice in front of him. Do you hold on to love, even if it could destroy the person you love most? Or do you let them go, believing that maybe a safer, more respectable life, even if it's with someone else, is the best thing for them? That's the war Brian is fighting inside, and honestly, it's heartbreaking because you know there's no right answer. Whatever he does, someone is going to get hurt. Meanwhile, Henry's frustration is reaching a boiling point. Watching Julia from a distance, not being able to touch her, not being able to save her, it's killing him. And the worst part is, Julia feels it too. You can see it in the way her eyes linger, the way her body tenses whenever she realizes Henry is near. She's living a double life now. On the outside, Simon Fraser's wife, with all the expectations that come with it. But on the inside, she's still Henry's, and that truth is eating her alive. Episode 9 hammered that tension home. Julia isn't just trapped physically, she's trapped emotionally, torn between the role she's forced to play and the love that keeps pulling her heart in the opposite direction. And Archibald, let's not forget him. He's been watching Henry like a hawk, circling him like prey. The guy is practically begging for an excuse to end Henry's life. And that threat hangs over every single scene Henry is in. That's why Henry can't make a reckless move. He knows one wrong step, one wrong glance that lingers too long, and it's over. It's cruel because the audience wants him to just run to Julia, to pull her into his arms. But the reality of his situation makes that impossible. That constant threat is what keeps the tension at a breaking point. Then we've got the bigger picture, the rebellion. The Earl of Mar raising the Jacobite standard is more than just history playing out. It's the line in the sand that forces every single character to choose a side, whether they're ready or not. And let's be honest, most of them aren't ready. Colum doesn't trust Duel. Duel clearly has his own agenda. And Davina Porter is slowly but surely stepping into a role where she might become one of the few people holding this whole fragile network together. Her willingness to stand with Julia, to risk her safety for William, sets her apart from almost everyone else in this story. And that makes her valuable but also vulnerable. Because people like her, the ones who choose compassion over calculation, rarely make it out unscathed. The episode does this brilliant thing where it keeps jumping between the intimate struggles, like Ellen's tears, Brian's hesitation, Henry's longing, and the larger political storm that's brewing. It's like watching two waves race toward each other, knowing that when they crash, the impact is going to be devastating. That's what episode 9 is building toward. The rebellion isn't just a backdrop, it's the force that's going to tear apart or bring together everything these characters have been fighting for. And here's where it gets even darker. The more the rebellion grows, the less control our characters will have over their own fates. Love stories, family loyalties, secret plans, all of that starts to matter less when armies are marching and blood is being spilled. That's the tragedy of this show. It makes us care so deeply about these characters' personal struggles, only to remind us that the larger forces of history don't care at all. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Ellen, Brian, Julia, and Henry. Their stories feel so urgent, so personal. But against the backdrop of the Jacobite rising, they're just pawns on a much bigger chessboard, and yet, the show refuses to let us give up hope. That's why it keeps dangling those little moments, Brian clutching the cloth, Julia locking eyes with Henry, Davina showing compassion. They're reminders that even in the middle of chaos, love and loyalty still exist. But the question is, will they survive long enough to matter? Episode 9 doesn't answer that. It just tightens the noose and leaves us gasping for air, desperate to see what comes next. If there's one thing episode 9 made painfully clear, it's that survival and happiness almost never go hand in hand. Every time one of our characters reaches for happiness, survival yanks it away, reminding them of the brutal world they're trapped in. And nowhere is that clearer than with Ellen and Brian. Their love should be enough, it feels like it should be enough, but the weight of their families, their clans, and now this rebellion is pressing down so hard that their love story feels like it's being crushed. before it can even bloom. Watching Ellen in this episode was like watching someone fight against quicksand. The more she tries to push forward, the deeper she sinks into this nightmare where her choices don't belong to her anymore. And Malcolm Grant forcing the timeline of their marriage just adds fuel to the fire. It's not just an engagement hanging over Ellen's head anymore, it's the clock running out. The way the Grants are circling her, the way Malcolm's uncle made those threats, the way Malcolm himself pushes with this urgency, it's terrifying. And here's the scary part, Malcolm doesn't even realize how dangerous he's making things for her. He's blinded by his affection, by his need to lock Ellen down, and in his own twisted way. He probably thinks he's protecting her. But really, he's pushing her into a corner where her only options are heartbreak or rebellion. That's why Ellen's tears at the end hit so hard, because they're not just about sadness. They're about fear. They're about knowing that her fate is no longer in her hands. Brian, on the other hand, is unraveling in his own quiet way. Episode 9 showed us a side of him we haven't seen before, this deep conflict between his head and his heart. On the surface, he looks calm, like he's trying to think logically, but underneath, he's crumbling. You can see it every time he hesitates. Every time he pauses, as if he's weighing a decision that could cost Ellen everything. That piece of cloth Mrs. Fitz gave him, it's haunting him. It's more than just a memory of their handfasting. It's a reminder of the promise he made, the love they swore to each other, and the cruel possibility that keeping that promise might be the very thing that destroys them. It's the kind of torment that eats a person alive. And Brian is living with it in every single moment. Now let's shift to Julia and Henry, because their story in this episode is pure agony. After that brief reunion in episode 8, episode 9 drags us right back into the harsh reality of their situation. Henry seeing Julia in the crowd should have been this beautiful, cinematic moment. Instead, it was like a punch to the gut. He sees her, but he can't touch her. He loves her, but he can't claim her. And Julia knows it, too. Her eyes say everything her lips can't. She wants to run to him. But Simon Fraser's grip on her life is like chains around her ankles. She's stuck in a role that suffocates her, forced to smile while her heart is breaking. And Henry can do nothing but watch. That's the cruelty of it. Their love is right there, so close. But the cost of reaching for it is too high. Archibug's presence makes it even worse. He's lurking like death personified, waiting for Henry to slip up. Every glance Henry gives Julia feels like a gamble with his life. One wrong move, one moment of weakness, and Archibug would end him right there. That constant shadow is what makes the love story so suffocating. It's not just the world keeping them apart, it's a man with a loaded gun, eager to pull the trigger. And it leaves us with this awful question: how long can Henry play this dangerous game before Archibug finally gets what he wants? But beyond the personal heartbreak, Episode 9 made it clear that the political landscape is shifting faster than anyone can keep up with. The Earl of Mar's proclamation was the spark that set the powder keg on fire. And now the flames are spreading everywhere. Families that used to stand together are starting to fracture. Secrets that used to be whispers are coming into the light. Duel's loyalty to the rebellion is no longer hidden, and Colum knows it. That moment between them, with Colum demanding answers, wasn't just about personal betrayal, it was about survival. Because if Colum can't trust the people closest to him, then his entire position crumbles. And once his power is gone, everyone tied to him, Ellen, Brian, even Julia, loses a layer of protection they desperately need. Davina Porter continues to stand out in all this chaos. She's proving that she's not just a side character but someone who might hold real weight in what's coming. Her willingness to see Julia for who she truly is, her compassion for William, her open-mindedness in a world full of judgment, it sets her apart. She's one of the few who seems to care about more than just power or survival. But that also paints a target on her back. Because in times like these, kindness is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable. And if Davina keeps choosing compassion over calculation, I can't shake the feeling that she's going to pay a price for it. What's brilliant about Episode 9 is how it forces us to care about both the small, intimate details and the massive historical forces at the same time. On one hand, we're obsessing over whether Ellen and Brian will ever get their chance, whether Julia and Henry will find a way to be together. On the other, we're watching the Jacobite rising erupt, knowing it's going to swallow everyone, no matter how much they fight against it. It's like the show is telling us, you can't separate love from war. You can't separate family from rebellion. They're all tangled together, and when one burns, they all burned up by the time the episode ends. You feel this heavy pit in your stomach. You know things are about to get worse before they get better. Ellen's tears, Brian's hesitation, Julia's silent suffering, Henry's desperation, it all points to heartbreak. And with the rebellion in full swing, heartbreak might be the least of their problems. The stakes aren't just emotional anymore, they're life or death. And that's what makes episode 9 so unforgettable. By the time episode 9 wraps up, you can feel the storm pressing in from every direction. It's like the walls are closing in, leaving Ellen, Brian, Julia, and Henry with less and less space to breathe. And the thing that makes it even more terrifying? Every choice they have left is a bad one. There are no easy outs anymore, no path that doesn't come with heartbreak, betrayal, or blood. And that's why episode 9 hits harder than any before it. It strips away the illusion of control and shows us just how powerless these characters really are in the face of history, family, and fate. Ellen's ending scene lingers like a scar. Those tears aren't just sadness, they're surrender. You can feel her spirit fighting, clawing for some way out, but at the same time, you can see that tiny crack of hopelessness forming. She's being forced into a marriage she doesn't want, locked into a life that feels like a cage. And the only man she truly loves is slipping further from her grasp. The cruel irony is that Ellen's love for Brian, the one thing that should give her strength, has become her greatest weakness. It's the rope Malcolm and her family are using to tighten around her neck. And deep down, she knows it. That's why her tears cut so deep. They're not just for herself, but for the dream she knows is dying. Brian is equally trapped, though his prison looks different. His sense of honor, his loyalty, his inability to walk away even when walking away might save them, that's his curse. The way he looks at Ellen in this episode is heartbreaking because you can see the war inside him. He wants to fight for her, to tear down every wall in their way, but he also knows the cost. And the cost is everything. If he pushes too hard, Ellen pays the price. If he doesn't push at all, they both lose each other anyway. It's a lose-lose situation, and it's eating him alive. That silent torment, the way he holds that piece of cloth like it's his last tether to her, is proof of how broken he already feels. Brian isn't just fighting Malcolm or Ellen's family anymore, he's fighting himself. And Julia? Her suffering might be the most devastating of all because it's quiet. It's the kind of pain that doesn't scream or rage, it just lingers in the eyes, in the silence. In the stolen glances with Henry, every time she looks at him, you feel this unbearable tension. It's not just love, it's desperation. She's trapped in Simon Fraser's world, forced to wear this mask of obedience. But her heart is still reaching for Henry with everything she has. The tragedy is that Henry can't save her, not yet. He's too surrounded, too threatened, with Archibald breathing down his neck like a predator waiting for the kill. Julia and Henry's story is the definition of doomed romance. And episode 9 makes sure we feel every ounce of their suffering. Henry himself feels like he's on borrowed time. The way he moves in this episode, the way he scans the crowd, the way he holds himself near Julia, it all feels like a man who knows death is watching him. And Archibald is that death, circling closer with every scene. Henry knows it, we know it. And Julia knows it most of all. That's why their every stolen moment feels so dangerous, so gut-wrenching. Because it could be the last. And maybe that's what makes their connection so powerful, it's built on the edge of a knife. But here's where the brilliance of episode 9 really lies. It's not just about personal tragedy. It's about how that tragedy collides with history. The rebellion is no longer a background hum, it's the driving force that will drag every single character into its orbit. The Earl of Mar's proclamation didn't just ignite a war, it shattered any hope of normalcy. Colum can't hold his family together. Davina can't keep protecting Julia without drawing fire. Duel's loyalties are out in the open, and that puts him on the edge of betrayal or sacrifice. Everyone is forced to choose a side, and with each choice, the consequences get deadlier. And that's the haunting thing about this show, it keeps reminding us that these characters aren't just pawns in some love story. They're pawns in a revolution. And revolutions don't care about love, or promises, or family ties. They devour everything. That's why the heartbreak in this episode feels so permanent, so final. Because even if Ellen and Brian, or Julia and Henry, somehow find a way to cling to each other, the rebellion will tear it all apart anyway. The war doesn't leave room for happy endings, it only leaves room for survival. So as we leave episode 9, the question isn't just what happens next. It's who survives long enough to see it. Ellen's tears, Brian's torment, Julia's silent heartbreak, Henry's desperation, they're not just moments in a story. They're warnings. Warnings that the storm has finally hit and no one is walking away untouched. Episode 9 is the kind of chapter that sticks with you because it doesn't give you answers. It gives you fear. It plants that sick feeling in your stomach that tells you things are about to get worse. Much worse. And as the rebellion explodes into full force, every fragile thread holding these characters together is going to snap. The only question left is, when the dust settles, who's still standing?